Some personal finance books begin with warnings. They tell you that if you do not become disciplined immediately, your future will be in danger. Others begin with rules, formulas, or lectures about sacrifice. I Will Teach You to Be Rich takes a different approach. Ramit Sethi does not try to motivate readers through shame. He does not present money as a moral battlefield where every purchase must be defended. Instead, he begins with a more appealing and more modern idea. Money should help you build a rich life, one that reflects your actual priorities, not someone else's script. This shift matters. It changes the emotional atmosphere of the entire conversation. Instead of asking how to become perfect with money, the book asks how to become intentional. Instead of turning budgeting into punishment, it turns financial planning into design. Instead of making financial success seem reserved for experts, it offers a practical system for ordinary people who want clarity, confidence, and results. In this summary, we will explore the book as both a money guide and a mindset guide. We will look at its central themes: automation, conscious spending, simple investing, behavioral psychology, and the idea of defining a rich life for yourself. We will also consider why the book resonated with so many readers. At its core, I Will Teach You to Be Rich is not about becoming obsessed with money. It is about creating a system that handles money well enough that you can spend more of your energy living. That is the promise of the book. And for many readers, that promise is exactly what makes it memorable. The central promise of this book can be summed up in one sentence. You do not need to deprive yourself in order to be financially responsible. This is one of Ramit Sethi's most important contributions to modern personal finance. He rejects the idea that the only path to financial success is relentless self-denial. In his view, that approach fails because it misunderstands human nature. People do not want a life of constant financial guilt. They do not want every coffee, dinner, trip, or convenience purchase to feel like a moral mistake. So if financial advice is built on restriction alone, many people will resist it, ignore it, or abandon it after a short burst of motivation. Sethi proposes a more sustainable model. Spend extravagantly on the things you love, and cut costs mercilessly on the things you do not. This idea sounds simple, but it contains a profound shift. It means money should be aligned with values. Not every expense deserves the same emotional weight. Some purchases enrich life. Others are just background habits, social pressure, or unconscious leakage. The point is not to become cheap. The point is to become deliberate. A person who deeply values travel might spend generously there while cutting aggressively on clothes, gadgets, or status-driven consumption. Another person might value convenience, fitness, or hosting family. In each case, the goal is not generic thrift. The goal is intentional design. This makes the book feel unusually humane. It acknowledges pleasure. It leaves room for ambition. It allows for enjoyment. But it asks that enjoyment be conscious rather than automatic. In this framework, a rich life is not about having more than everyone else. It is about spending confidently on what matters, because the rest of your financial life is structured well enough to support it. Sethi understands that most people do not fail with money because they are lazy or unintelligent. They fail because money is often taught badly, explained late, and wrapped in emotional tension. Many adults enter financial life with little practical training. They know they should save, should invest, should build credit, should pay attention to fees, but the steps remain vague. At the same time, the subject feels embarrassing. If someone does not understand how a retirement account works or feels overwhelmed by credit cards and bank accounts, that confusion can produce avoidance. And avoidance is one of the most expensive habits in personal finance. You ignore a statement. You postpone setting up an account. You delay investing for another year. You assume you will deal with it later. Then later becomes much later. Sethi tries to break this cycle by lowering the intimidation barrier. He does not assume the reader already knows the language. He also does not glorify complexity. In fact, One of the book's most reassuring messages is that most people do not need a brilliant financial strategy. They need a basic system that works. This is a radical simplification. It means that personal finance is not mainly about genius. It is about infrastructure. You need the right accounts, the right automatic flows, the right habits, and a clear sense of what you are trying to support with your money. Once that structure is in place, the emotional burden decreases. Money becomes less mysterious because it becomes more visible. And when visibility improves, confidence often follows. One of the strengths of I Will Teach You to Be Rich is that it starts with fundamentals. Sethi does not leap straight into advanced investing or complicated theories. He begins with the basic financial tools that shape everyday life. Bank accounts, checking, savings, fees, convenience, and access. This may sound unglamorous, but it is essential. Many people lose money not because they made dramatic mistakes, but because they accepted weak systems by default. They stay with banks that charge unnecessary fees. They use accounts that make saving inconvenient. They treat their financial infrastructure as fixed rather than revisable. Sethi wants readers to stop drifting and start choosing. A checking account is not just a neutral holding place. A savings account is not just an afterthought. These are behavioral tools. The way they are set up influences what becomes easy and what becomes neglected. A separate savings account with automatic transfers can make saving more likely. A better bank can reduce friction and wasted money. The larger lesson is subtle but important. Financial success begins with systems, not emotions. If the structure of your money works against you, good intentions will have to fight uphill. If the structure supports you, discipline becomes easier. This reflects one of Sethi's deepest instincts as a teacher. He does not trust vague motivation nearly as much as he trusts well-designed defaults. He wants readers to make smart decisions once, then benefit from those decisions repeatedly. Banking in his framework is not a boring prerequisite. It is the first layer of personal financial architecture. Sethi is also notable for how he approaches credit. Rather than treating credit cards as inherently evil, he treats them as tools that require maturity and understanding. This is important because many people receive simplistic messages about credit. They are told either to avoid it entirely or to use it casually without appreciating its long-term consequences. Sethi rejects both extremes. He argues that credit, used intelligently, can be helpful. It can build a credit history, provide convenience, offer consumer protection, and support broader financial flexibility. But when used carelessly, it can create debt, stress, and patterns of avoidance that are difficult to unwind. What matters is not the existence of the tool, but the relationship the user has to it. In this part of the book, Sethi encourages readers to understand how credit scores work, how to pay bills on time, how to avoid carrying high-interest balances, and how to treat credit strategically rather than emotionally. This advice fits the tone of the book as a whole. He wants the reader to grow into financial adulthood. That means understanding the systems that shape your life rather than fearing them or misusing them. A credit score, for example, is not glamorous, but it affects real opportunities. Housing, loans, rates, and even convenience can be influenced by it. So the adult move is not avoidance. The adult move is literacy. Learn the rules. Build good habits. Use the system to your advantage rather than letting ignorance quietly cost you money. This is one of the places where the book feels especially practical. It takes a topic that many people either fear or ignore and frames it as a manageable, learnable part of modern life. If there is one idea that defines the book more than any other, it is automation. Ramit Sethi believes that the biggest mistake people make with money is relying on memory, discipline, and repeated manual decision-making. They mean to save. They mean to invest. They mean to transfer money into the right places. But life gets busy. Motivation changes. Bills arrive. Priorities compete. The result is inconsistency. Sethi's solution is to build a financial system that works in the background. Income comes in. Certain amounts automatically move toward savings. Certain amounts go toward investments. Bills are handled. Debt payments are scheduled. The whole structure becomes less dependent on emotion. This is a powerful idea because it recognizes a truth about behavior. People often do better when good actions are made easy and neglect is made harder. Automation reduces the number of moments where procrastination can enter. It also protects long-term goals from short-term mood. On a tired day, a person might not choose to make a transfer. But if the transfer is automatic, the good action happens anyway. Over time, this creates consistency. And consistency is one of the greatest advantages in personal finance. Automation also changes how money feels. Instead of being a recurring source of decisions, guilt, and vague promises, it becomes a managed flow. That flow can be reviewed and improved, but it no longer depends on constant attention. Sethi wants money to become almost boring in the best possible way. Not dramatic. Not chaotic. Not endlessly optimized. Just dependable. This is one of the reasons the book has had such staying power. Many financial books give advice. This one gives a structure. And structure is often what turns insight into actual change. Traditional budgeting often feels oppressive because it starts from a defensive position. Do not spend too much. Cut back here. Feel bad there. Watch every category. Monitor every indulgence. Sethi understands that this framing creates resistance. So he replaces the language of budgeting with the idea of a conscious spending plan. That shift may sound cosmetic, but it changes the psychology of the entire exercise. A budget suggests restriction. A conscious spending plan suggests choice. It implies that your money should reflect what matters to you, not just what you are trying to avoid. This is where the phrase rich life becomes especially meaningful. If you know what truly matters, then your spending can become sharper and more confident. You can say yes with more enthusiasm because you also know what deserves a firm no. For Sethi, the real problem is not spending itself. The problem is mindless spending. Money drifts away in subscriptions, convenience habits, social comparison, and routine upgrades that bring very little actual satisfaction. Meanwhile, the categories that genuinely improve life may remain underfunded or treated as guilty pleasures. The conscious spending model reverses that pattern. It says that a person should not apologize for spending in ways that align with their priorities, provided the overall system is healthy. This is one of the book's most refreshing ideas. It allows financial discipline and enjoyment to coexist. It suggests that responsibility does not require joylessness. In fact, financial plans are more likely to last when they include real pleasure, real meaning, and real room for personal identity. Investing is one of the areas where people most often become paralyzed. The choices seem endless. The terminology can feel intimidating. There is constant noise from media, opinions, predictions, and fear of getting it wrong. Sethi's approach is designed to cut through that noise. He does not present investing as a game of prediction or a contest of intelligence. He presents it as a process that ordinary people can handle if they focus on the right principles. Start early. Invest consistently. Use low-cost, broadly sensible investment vehicles. Avoid waiting for perfect understanding before taking action. In this framework, the greatest danger is not necessarily choosing an imperfect investment. It is never beginning at all. Sethi wants readers to understand the cost of delay. Years matter. Habits matter. Consistency matters. The compounding power of long-term investing rewards those who start and stay engaged. It does not require daily attention. It requires direction and patience. This is another example of the book's deeper philosophy. Good financial behavior often wins by being steady, not flashy. Sethi is skeptical of unnecessary complexity because complexity often becomes a performance. People feel more sophisticated when they chase advanced strategies, but sophistication does not always produce better outcomes. For many readers, simplicity is more powerful because it leads to action. A simple plan actually implemented is better than a brilliant plan endlessly postponed. The emotional tone here matters too. Sethi is trying to remove intimidation. He wants the reader to see investing not as a mysterious elite activity, but as a standard part of adult financial life. That normalization is valuable. It tells readers that long-term wealth building is less about brilliance than about participation, structure, and patience. A lot of financial advice assumes that if people know what to do, they will automatically do it. But that is clearly not how life works. People know they should save, yet they avoid opening the account. They know they should invest, yet they delay for years. They know they should cancel wasteful expenses, yet small habits continue month after month. Sethi's insight is that personal finance is deeply behavioral. Good advice fails when it does not account for embarrassment, inertia, impulse, identity, and fatigue. This is one reason he resists guilt-based money language. Guilt may create a short burst of urgency, but it rarely creates a durable, healthy relationship with money. In fact, guilt often leads to avoidance. If money feels like a place where you are constantly failing, you may stop looking closely at it. Sethi's tone tries to prevent that. He wants the reader to feel capable rather than condemned. He also understands that people do not only spend for practical reasons. They spend emotionally. They buy convenience, belonging, self-reward, distraction, and identity. Financial planning that ignores these realities will always be too abstract. The book is effective because it tries to design around human nature rather than pretend human nature can be removed. Automation helps because it reduces reliance on willpower. Conscious spending helps because it gives pleasure a legitimate place. Simplicity helps because complexity feeds procrastination. Put together, these choices create a behavioral system, not just a financial theory. And that is one of the deepest lessons of the book. Money improves not merely when you know more, but when your environment, habits, and emotional patterns are aligned with better action. One of the most enduring ideas in the book is the phrase rich life. Sethi uses it to challenge the vague and often socially inherited idea of what wealth is supposed to look like. Many people drift into financial goals they never consciously chose. Bigger house, nicer car, visible upgrades. The image may be familiar, but it may not actually reflect what makes them feel fulfilled. A rich life, as Sethi defines it, is personal. It should be grounded in what genuinely matters to you. Maybe that means travel. Maybe it means flexibility in work. Maybe it means taking care of family, outsourcing stressful chores, eating well, or buying back time. The point is not the category. The point is clarity. Without clarity, people spend in imitation. With clarity, they can spend in alignment. This idea has emotional force because it changes how success is measured. Success is no longer about matching an external standard. It is about building a life that feels deliberately shaped. Money becomes a tool for expression and support, not just accumulation. It also changes how sacrifice feels. Cutting back on things you do not value becomes easier when you know what you are protecting or enabling. You are not simply spending less. You are redirecting resources towards something more meaningful. This is part of what makes the book feel more expansive than many finance books. It does not treat money as an isolated topic. It treats money as part of life design. And when finance is connected to life design, discipline starts to feel less like denial and more like authorship. Another important feature of Sethi's philosophy is that he does not believe personal finance should revolve exclusively around cutting costs. Saving matters, of course. Waste matters. But there is a limit to how much a person can shrink life through frugality alone. At some point, earning more becomes part of the conversation. This distinguishes Sethi from advice that focuses only on reducing small expenses. He recognizes that people often spend too much time trying to optimize tiny categories while neglecting larger levers. Negotiating salary, changing jobs strategically, Building valuable skills or finding ways to expand income can have much bigger effects than endless attention to trivial cuts. This does not mean frugality is irrelevant. It means frugality should be selective and intelligent. Save where it does not matter. Spend where it does. Earn more where possible. This creates a more dynamic model of wealth building. You are not trapped in a defensive crouch, constantly trying to consume less. You are also trying to create more room. This part of the book feels especially modern because it acknowledges ambition without shame. Wanting more money is not automatically greedy. If handled wisely, higher income can support generosity, security, freedom, and enjoyment. But Sethi's point is that earning more only helps when it is integrated into a conscious system. Otherwise, higher income can disappear into lifestyle inflation. So the richer lesson is this: grow income, but do not let your structure remain sloppy. Expansion only works when the framework is sound. The book presents its advice through a 6-week program, and this format matters. It suggests that financial transformation does not happen through one giant breakthrough. It happens through a sequence of manageable steps. Week by week, the reader is asked to set up accounts, review systems, understand credit, automate money, and begin investing more intelligently. This structure makes the process feel finite and actionable. Instead of vaguely intending to get better with money someday, the reader is invited into a short-term sequence with visible tasks. That creates momentum. And momentum matters because personal finance often stalls at the beginning. The hardest part is often not complexity. It is inertia. Sethi's format quietly solves that by narrowing the next move. Do this first. Then this. Then this. Each step reduces vagueness. And each completed action creates a little more confidence. The 6-week idea also reflects something deeper about how change actually works. People become financially stronger not through inspiration alone, but through repeated interactions with systems. They log in, compare, transfer, set, review, and understand. Over time, these actions stop feeling extraordinary and start feeling normal. That normalization is one of the book's hidden gifts. It helps the reader become the kind of person who handles money directly, calmly, and with less emotional friction. One reason I will teach you to be rich continues to resonate is that it feels human. The language is direct. The advice is practical. The tone assumes the reader is capable, even if inexperienced. This matters more than it may first appear. Many people feel alienated by financial language because it is either too dry or too judgmental. Sethi tries to avoid both extremes. He writes as someone who understands that readers are busy, imperfect, and sometimes inconsistent. Rather than demanding perfection, he asks for a workable structure. Rather than encouraging constant vigilance, he encourages intelligent setup. Rather than glorifying sacrifice, he emphasizes priorities. This makes the book feel unusually compatible with real life. It accepts that people want joy, convenience, and ambition. It accepts that they will not become full-time financial hobbyists. It accepts that the best financial plan is often the one that fits actual behavior while gently improving it. Underneath all the tactics lies a surprisingly compassionate principle. Money should serve life, not colonize it. Financial systems should reduce stress, not become an additional identity burden. A reader does not need to become a different species of person to improve. They need better defaults, clearer priorities, and a willingness to stop avoiding the subject. That humane quality is central to the book's appeal. It offers competence without coldness. In the end, I Will Teach You to Be Rich is best understood not as a narrow finance manual, but as a design philosophy for modern money. Ramit Sethi wants readers to move away from random, reactive financial behavior and toward deliberate, automated, values-based systems. He wants them to stop feeling that personal finance requires misery, obsession, or endless self-judgment. Instead, he offers a more generous and more disciplined idea. Build a strong structure. Know what matters to you. Automate the essentials. Invest simply. Use money consciously. Define your rich life for yourself. The beauty of this message is that it balances responsibility with possibility. It does not ask the reader to shrink into austerity. It asks them to grow into clarity. It says that financial adulthood is not mainly about saying no to everything. It is about learning how to say yes with intention. Yes to what you value. Yes to systems that support your future. Yes to less stress. Yes to confidence. Yes to a life that feels chosen rather than improvised. If the book leaves one lasting impression, it is this. Personal finance is not a punishment for having desires. It is a framework for turning those desires into something sustainable. When money is handled well, it stops being a source of constant background anxiety. It becomes a quiet form of support. And that may be the most meaningful version of being rich. Not simply having more, but living with more alignment, more ease, and more freedom to direct your resources toward what actually matters.